Thank you so much for tuning in to my channel. I pray that God continues to give you all the wisdom and all the knowledge needed on your walk with Christ. If you would, hit the thumbs up button, like this video, comment the revelation that you've gotten as a result of watching, because your revelation will help someone in the future, and subscribe to this channel for more content. Are you ready to get into your royal teaching for today? Let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome again to my channel. Today we are going into part 2 of Faith That Heals, Calls, and Deepens. I hope and pray that part 1 blessed you in a tremendous way, but y'all, if I'm honest, part 2 is even better. As the Lord was dealing with me deeper on Matthew chapter 9, He blessed my soul. I'm gonna be honest with you. He blessed my soul. And I pray that as I share, it blesses your soul. And I pray in this moment that you would have ears to hear, that you would have eyes to see what the Lord is doing through Matthew chapter 9. Because it is something very powerful and very profound, and I believe that it can change your life. So, without further ado, let's go into part 2 of Faith That Heals, Calls, and Deepens. All right, so y'all, we are still in chapter 9 of Matthew, and we're going to go into verse 18, and for this part we're going to be primarily in verse 18 through 25. Even though these verses, it's not many verses between 18 and 25, but there are so many nuggets of information. There are so many things that can increase our faith. There is so many things that I believe will help us on our journey as it pertains to faith and seeing the faith of Jairus and the faith of the woman with the issue of blood. So let's go into it. I want to first read this whole thing to you. Matthew chapter 9 verses 18 through 20. Matthew chapter 9 verses 18 through 26. I previously said 25, but we're going to be in Matthew chapter 9 verses 18 through 26. And it reads, "As Jesus was saying this, the leader of a synagogue came and knelt down before him. 'My daughter has just died,' he said, 'but you can bring her back to life again if you just come and lay your hands on her.' So Jesus and his disciples got up and went with him. Just then, a woman who had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding came up behind him. She touched the fringe of his robe, for she thought, 'If I can just touch his robe, I will be healed.' Jesus turned around, and when he saw her, he said, 'Daughter, be encouraged. Your faith has made you well.' And the woman was healed at that moment. When Jesus arrived at the official's home, he saw the noisy crowd and heard the funeral music. 'Get out,' he told them. 'The girl isn't dead. She's only asleep.' But the crowd laughed at him. After the crowd was put out, however, Jesus went in and took the girl by the hand, and she stood up. The report of this miracle swept through the entire countryside." As we go along in these verses, I pray that you have pen and paper, because there are so many things that are in these few verses that I want to bring out, and I want to just jog your thoughts And so my prayer in this moment is that you would write it down, because I believe that you are going to need it for a different season, for a different time in your life. And you never know what you may need then. And so, what I'm going to do is give you a few things that you are going to need faith for as it pertains to having faith in different situations. And I'm going to correlate what I'm going to give you with these few verses. And so I pray that you have pen and paper handy, because I believe this is going to bless you tremendously. Y'all ready? All right. So the first thing is faith for dead things. So if you read this particular story in any of the other gospels, it'll tell you that when Jairus came up to Jesus, he says that his child, his only daughter, is sick. It doesn't say, however, as Matthew says, that she had died. It said that when he came to Jesus, he said, "My daughter is sick." And so it seems as though Matthew is wanting, or is eager, to get to the point and show you the faith. He is wanting to not necessarily tell you that the child was sick and then died. He is trying to get to the point of saying, eventually, of course, yes, his daughter dies. But what he is trying to do is get to the point of the faith. He is wanting to emphasize the faith that Jairus had. Also, in the other gospels, it says that, the daughter was sick, and on the way to healing his child, Jesus comes across this woman with the issue of blood. She touches the hem of his garment and is healed. And in the midst of Jesus speaking to the woman, someone comes up to Jairus and says, "Hey, don't bother Jesus anymore. Your daughter has already died." What I want you to focus in on is that is not in here. That is not in the book of Matthew. Matthew eliminated all of that. Not saying that, from Matthew's perspective that it didn't happen, but Matthew was trying to press in on or emphasize the faith that Jairus and the woman with the issue of blood had. He wasn't trying to focus on, people coming to Jairus saying that his daughter died. He wasn't trying to focus on anything other than the faith of Jairus and the woman with the issue of blood. So one thing when it comes to dead things, I said you have to have faith for dead things, right? So when it comes to those things, and I want to drop down to verses 23 and 24, which says, when Jesus arrived at the official's home, he saw the noisy crowd and heard the funeral music. "Get out," he told them. "The girl isn't dead, she's only asleep." But the crowd laughed at him. What I want you to focus in on was the fact that after he said that the girl isn't dead, she's only asleep, is when the crowd laughed at him. My question to you, friend, is, are you ready to look crazy while having faith for dead things? Are you ready to be laughed at? Are you ready to be ridiculed because you decided to have faith in Jesus to resurrect something in your life that has been dead? And it doesn't matter how long this thing that is in your life has been dead, because no matter how long it has been dead, Jesus can resurrect it. Look at the story of Lazarus. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, it was day number 4. So in Jewish custom, that meant that that person was actually dead, because after the third day, the body starts to decay, the body starts to rot and starts to smell. So Jesus waited intentionally for day number 4 to come and raise Lazarus from the dead. It does not matter how long your situation has been dead. It does not matter how long that thing has been deceased in your life. Jesus can still resurrect and he can still heal. But my question to you, friend, is are you ready to look absolutely insane when you start having faith for the dead thing? Are you ready for people to start laughing at you when you begin to do what God told you to do? And that thing may not be normal, and that thing is out of the cultural norm. Because that is crazy faith. Crazy faith says, I don't care what goes on outside in the physical realm. I know that God told me to do X, Y, and Z. And if he told me to do X, Y, and Z, he's going to take care of everything else going on around me. And it's only crazy until God resurrects the dead thing in your life. It's only crazy faith until that crazy thing that you've been believing God for happens. And in a season where you are having faith in God for something that has died, for something that you believe that he will do, you have to understand that everybody is not on your side. I know, friend, that you want to believe that everyone is going to be in your corner and cheering you on. That is not going to be the case. There's some people that's going to be preying on your downfall. So when it comes to having faith and believing in God for something, you can't tell everybody. It's okay. Some people can go with you and some people can't. That's why in the last part I said I talked about having friends, having faith for friends. Because you're going to need those friends that are going to have faith with you. Just know that those friends are your circle, but everybody cannot be in your circle. So are you ready, friend, for people to ridicule you? Are you ready for people to laugh at you? Because as the word says, they laughed at Jesus. When Jesus said that she isn't dead, she's only asleep, they laughed at him. So are you ready, friend? As a follower of Jesus, are you ready to be laughed at? Are you ready to be ridiculed? Because that is a part of following Jesus. My second point is faith for maybe. I want to go to verses 20 through 22. And it says, just then a woman who had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding came up behind him. She touched the fringe of his robe, for she thought, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Jesus turned around, and when he saw her, he said, daughter, be encouraged. Your faith has made you well. And the woman was healed at that moment. What I want to park on right here in these particular verses is faith for maybe. Faith for maybe. This woman had maybe faith. She had no idea if Jesus could heal her. I could imagine that she had done everything she possibly could. She paid for medication. She probably, spent money on different things that she felt as though could heal her. but nothing worked. And so in this moment, she says, maybe if I touch, I don't even have to touch him. Maybe if I can just get to the point where I touch the fringe, the hem of his garment, maybe, just maybe, I will be healed. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I need to see. I need to at least try my best to get to the point where I touch the hem of his garment. She first had to believe who he was to have faith that he could heal her. So that tells me that faith is not just a point in which I believe that Jesus could do it, but it tells me and shows me that faith is it's relational. Because and this is, for anybody in any relationship, if I don't know you, then that means I can't trust you. But if I know who you are, if I know your ways, if I know that you are this person or that person, then that means that I can trust you. She knew who Jesus was. And I mean, we have no idea, if she had seen somebody else get healed. We have no idea any of that. But in her heart of hearts, she knew this has to be the Messiah. And if he is the Messiah, I have faith that he can heal me. I also want you to see something, and I'm going to jump over to Luke chapter 8, and I am going to be in verses 42, and I'm going to stop at verse 44. And this is the same story, but I want you to see the picture, and I want you to see how Luke paints the whole story. So it's Luke chapter 8, and I'm going to read verses 42 through 44, which reads, "His only daughter, who was about 12 years old, was dying. As Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by the crowds. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she could find no cure. Coming up behind Jesus, she touched the fringe of his robe. Immediately, the bleeding stopped." What I want to emphasize here is that she was in the crowd, okay? So I would imagine that her pain, her constant bleeding, would have made her fall over, would have made her double over in pain. So even though she was surrounded by people, she had to fight the crowd to get to Jesus. Because a person, and let's just paint a picture, a person who is doubled over in pain, or a person who is in pain, would be doubled over. So if she touched the hem of his garment, she had to be on the floor. She had to be doubled over. She had to be down. She fought through a crowd. Maybe faith will help you fight through the crowd of mess, through the crowd of people saying you can't. And maybe faith will have you touching the fringe of his robe so that you will be made whole. Y'all, She had to be on the ground. She had to be doubled over in pain, saying, oh my God, if only I could just touch the hem of his garment. I don't have a certainty, but just maybe, if I could just muster up a little faith. Her faith gave her strength to move through the crowd. Her faith gave her strength, y'all. And when she touched the hem of his garment and was made whole, her maybe faith turned into certainly faith. Certainly, certainly. Even though she had no idea if her maybe faith would turn into certainly faith, she said, I'm going to try it. I've tried everything. Luke says she couldn't find a cure. So maybe faith, y'all. Maybe faith says, Lord, I believe you're telling me to do this. Everything around me is saying no. Everything around me is against me. Everything around me is telling me to stick to what I know. But I know that the God of the universe is my healer, is my way maker, is my provider, is my protector. So if you are all these things and so much more, maybe, just maybe, you can do it. Y'all, Jesus only needs a just maybe. Just maybe faith. Just maybe I can be healed. Just maybe my family member or my friend can come to know the Lord. Just maybe you're telling me to quit my job without a backup plan and do content creating and write a book and do ministers in training. Just maybe you are telling me this. And y'all, if it is God, if the Lord is saying this to you, step out on the maybe faith, because your maybe faith will turn into certainly faith. You will not know what will happen until you act on a maybe. So my question to you, friend, today is, what do you need to fight through to touch the hem of his garment? Trust me, there are a lot of things that are fighting against your faith. There are people putting thoughts in your head that are coming against your faith. There are TV shows that are coming against your faith. The news that is coming against your faith. What do you need to fight against in order to push through the crowd and touch the hem of his garment? Because we all have something that we need to power through, that we need to push through. And guess what? In the midst of you pushing through, this is what you need to be in. You need to be in his word. I can't remember where it is in the scripture and the word for word, but the word says that the word itself, this Bible is a light to our feet. That means that when we read this word, when we devote ourselves to this word, and when we decide to obey this word, he orders our steps. The word also says that the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. So when we have faith, when we have maybe faith, he orders our steps. He tells us what to do next. He leads us into all spirit and truth. He leads our lives. So what do you need to have maybe faith for today? I also want to point something out, and we're going to go back to Matthew. We're going to come back to Luke in just a moment, but going back to Matthew, I want you to see something. Jairus had to get to Jesus for the woman to crawl to him. I'm going to say that again. Jairus had to get to Jesus, but the woman had to crawl to him. There is never a time where one person's faith looks the same as another. Like I said, Jairus had to go to him. Jairus had to physically walk to him and find where Jesus was. And once he found Jesus, he said, Lord, this is what's going on. I need you to come. But the woman had to crawl. The woman had to fight against the crowd to get to him. Understand that your faith and your faith journey does not look like the person sitting next to you's journey. Everybody's journey looks different. And your maybe faith will look different from my maybe faith. And my maybe faith will look different from this person's maybe faith. That is something to keep in mind. The next thing is faith for God's timing. Okay? So for this point, I want to go back to Luke chapter 8. And we're going to be, more specifically, we're going to be in Luke chapter 8, verses 42 and 43, which says, his only daughter, who was about 12 years old, was dying. As Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by the crowds. A woman in the crowd who suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she could find no cure. So what I want you to see is the correlation here. If you pay attention, Jairus' daughter is 12 years old, right? The woman had been bleeding for 12 years. I can only imagine how this played out. Let me just paint a picture for you. So in one hospital room 12 years ago, a baby was being born. In the other hospital room, this woman was being told that she had a situation. This woman was being told that she could be bleeding for the rest of her life. This woman was being told that she had a condition, and eventually she would find that there would be no cure. This miracle tells me that God's timing is better than ours. Mind you, this was 12 years in the making. And it's crazy because even though this was 12 years in the making, this is one of the faith stories that would go on to show millions or billions of people worldwide what happens when you put your faith in God. The woman had to wait for 12 years to be healed. And in the midst of her pain, in the midst of her waiting, God had to renew her strength. How, you may say, how do you know he renewed her strength? Because she had just enough strength to act when she saw Jesus. She had enough strength to move on her maybe faith. When she saw Jesus, let me tell you something, friend. Not only do you have to have faith for God's timing, but in the midst of God's timing, you have to have faith for strength. When you have faith, God renews your strength. Y'all, this this blessed me, because when you are in a situation where you are believing God like never before, you have to have your strength renewed. Because if you don't, you will not fight the good fight, and you will not press toward the mark. Y'all, if this ain't blessing nobody, it's blessing me, because our strength needs to be renewed. And how do you renew your strength? You wait on the Lord. Because the word says, they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up on wings as eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint. Waiting on the Lord. And it's not just waiting on the Lord, twiddling your thumbs. It's waiting on the Lord and seeking him. Waiting on the Lord and asking every day, Lord, what do you need me to do? How can I step out on faith today? In my waiting, what do you need me to do? How can I wait on you? And it's not, I also want you to see this. It's not just wait, W-A-I-T. Okay? It's wait, W-E-I-G-H-T. Putting your weight on God. Trusting and believing that he will keep every promise. Knowing that he is never going to leave your side. Another thing, and this is another way I am seeing it right now, is waiting on God. Being a waiter. When you go to a restaurant and the waiter seats, or the waiter asks you what you want to drink and asks you what you want to eat, and they come back and say, hey, is everything good? Is the food tasting good? You know, can I get you anything else? Waiting on God. Serving God. When you serve God and when you serve his people, your faith equals strength. When you serve God, serving God with the fruit of your lips, serving God with the thing that he told you to do, serving God by feeding the homeless, serving God in many different ways, that is when your strength is renewed. I also want you to see this perspective from Jairus's point of view. So when we look at this story in Luke chapter 8, Jairus is leading Jesus to his house, and then the woman touches the fringe of his garment. You know, he goes on, or Luke goes on to say in verse 45 and following, "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. Everyone denied it, and Peter said, "Master, this whole crowd is pressing up against you." But Jesus said, "Someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me." When the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. The whole crowd heard her explain why she had touched him, and that she had been immediately healed. Daughter, he said to her, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. While he was still speaking to her, a messenger arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. He told him, your daughter is dead. There is no use troubling the teacher now. What I want to show you is this. Even in this, Jairus had to wait. Jairus had to wait for the woman with the issue of blood to get healed and to explain her story to everybody in the crowd. And Jesus continued to speak with her. And then the person from Jairus's home came and told him, hey, don't bother Jesus no more. Your daughter's already dead. What I want you to see is that sometimes as we go on in this faith journey, sometimes it can seem like everybody else is getting their healing, is getting their breakthrough, is getting their deliverance before you. And it feels like everybody is having or believing in God, and they're getting their blessing and they're getting what they need from God, and you're just sitting here waiting. You're sitting here reading your word. You're sitting here getting your strength renewed. You're sitting here doing all the things that God has asked you to do, and he still ain't came through. And guess what? In that moment, that is when your faith increases. Especially if you are honest with God. If you're like, God, what's happening? You said this would happen. Everybody else then got their blessing and moved on. Where you at, Lord? Where you at? Where are you? And in that moment, the Lord, in all of his grace, in all of his love, and in all of his kindness, increases your faith. But he only increases your faith when you keep your eyes on him. That is what faith is all about. Keeping your main focus on him. Because everything else around you is saying, don't do that. That's not okay. You gotta live. You have to sustain yourself. You have to pay your bills. You have to do all these things. But God is saying, hey, put that away. God is saying, leave that situation. God is saying, don't worry about that. Just walk away. And in the moment where we are seeing everybody else get blessed, we have to focus on him. Because like I said before, our timing is not God's timing. The word says in Isaiah 60:22, when the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. I, the Lord, will make it happen. We have to understand that the heavenly realms, the spiritual realm, is not constructed by our time. They don't have the concept of time in the heavenly realms. So whenever God says it's time, that's when it will happen. Be encouraged, friend, and continue to focus on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Continue to keep your eyes. Isaiah 26 and verse 3 said, he will keep us in perfect peace if our minds are stayed on him, because we trust in him. So that tells me that my trust will eventually come to the point where I am keeping my eyes on him where I am focused on Him and my mind is focused on Him, so much so that He gives me peace. So when it seems like everybody else is being blessed, when it seems like everybody else is getting their breakthrough and you are not, continue to focus on Him. Continue to keep your mind on Him and on His word, and trust that He will give you perfect peace. My last and final point, y'all. I'm glad y'all been rocking with me up until this point. I got one more thing to say and I'm gonna let y'all go. All right. So the next one is faith for others. Y'all, so I have a question. What if Jairus never went to go get Jesus? What if Jairus never had the faith to say, I'm gonna go find Jesus, and if he could just lay his hands on my daughter, she will raise from the dead? What if Jairus said, I don't have the faith to believe that Jesus can do this? We would have never known about the woman with the issue of blood. The woman with the issue of blood would have continued to bleed. The woman with the issue of blood would have not been given the chance or the opportunity to have her faith in motion. She would have not been able to act upon her maybe faith. Y'all, who do you need to have faith for today? Who needs your faith today? Because what I've learned is that faith is contagious. We see it in many places in the Bible, especially with Jesus healing people. But especially in this story, we see that Jairus acted upon his faith first, and then the woman was like, wait a minute, I'm gonna go ahead and try to see if Jesus could heal me. You might be on the way to healing Jairus's daughter, but can you come see about me? Maybe. Let me go check. Let me go see. Y'all, who needs your faith today? Because faith is contagious. If one person has it and says, I'm believing God for this, and then you're on your way to get your blessing, and you're going and doing whatever you're doing, and then all of a sudden someone else is like, wait a minute, I need Jesus, can you heal me too? Faith is contagious, y'all. And when we activate our faith, when we put our faith into action, others will have faith as well. Faith is not something we just have at salvation. Yes, we have to have faith when we decide at that point to give our lives to Christ. But the word says that without faith, it is impossible to please God. And it is needed to please God because it causes us to relinquish control. Y'all, I could keep going. Because that relinquish control part, oh baby, that I could preach that till the cows come home. But I hope and pray that part 2 of Faith That Heals, Calls, and Deepens has blessed you tremendously, friend. And y'all, I'm coming back with part 3 because there's more in the 9th chapter of Matthew that I want to talk about. And so I pray that you have been blessed by this, and I pray that it comes with a change of perspective on faith, a change of heart, and that you would continue on this faith journey. And trust me, friend, you are not alone. I'm here, you're here, we're all here. And so what I would like for you to do is put in the comments what you have faith for today. What are you believing God for today, friend? What I'm going to do is I am going to pray that you and your faith is strengthened, and that you do not waver, that you continue to believe God for what He said He would do. And remember that every promise He has ever made to you is yes and amen. So comment what you are believing and having faith in God for today. And I will see you in part 3 of Faith That Heals, Calls, and Deepens. Bye, friends.